All right. Hello, everybody. I'm sitting down today with Bob Hazelrigg. Bob, how are you?
I'm fine, but I prefer Robert, my father's Bob.
Okay, fair enough. Robert, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Very good. So, why don't you just tell us a little bit about what you do right now?
So, I'm a graphic artist, a internet marketer, a web designer. Been doing marketing, graphic design for probably a little over 30 years. I love what I do. I do it because it's fun. I like making a difference in people's lives and their businesses.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Gotta love what you do, right?
I think you do. I think it's important. The more passionate you are about what you do, I think the better you are at it.
For sure.
Right. So,
Yeah, I've had things in my life where I wasn't so passionate about and I wasn't good at them. So, I mean, I'm definitely passionate about what I'm doing now. I get that. So, cool. So, you're a graphic artist. So, what kind of graphic art do you do? Like, you have big clients or like little clients, freelance stuff?
so I do a lot, and I don't know. Like a lot of people consider me freelance, probably because I don't really work on a contract. I just do everything per diem. People come to me and they say, "Hey, I need whatever it is they need," and then I try to execute that for them. And that could be it could be a website, it could be a video, it could be a brochure, it could be a logo. Got a phone call from an architect the other day who said, "You got a really good eye. I'm about to do an interview with a client, and I want you to come video it for us." And I'm like, "Okay."
Nice. Okay.
But it's an opportunity because it's a really big client of mine
Mm-hmm.
who has an even bigger client that's theirs, who owns a lot of really big real estate across the country.
Ooh.
Um,
Okay.
and I've done a lot of real estate work over the years. I used to work for a company called NAI Global. Um, After that, I worked for another real estate company called Your Home Direct. I was a creative director there, and I had a lot of fun there doing a lot of insane, crazy guerrilla marketing. And since then, I've done a lot of other real estate work too for little shops and big organizations. So,
When you do the real estate work, you're doing it for like brokerages or you're doing it for individual agents?
so everything,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I when I worked for Your Home Direct, I was the creative director, so I did everything there. I did 200 billboards a quarter. I did 13 newspapers a week,
Wow.
and then I did all the direct mail. I did all the brochures for the properties, and when I brought that in house, it was all automated.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked with some programmers there in the company, uh, and we were able to utilize a plugin in Quark Express at the time that allowed us to streamline our production and just bang that out with a minimal staff. And we were doing full scale print shop work in house, and it was great. I had a staff of about 13 people. I had one fella who reported directly to me, and then some other people that were really just production people. And
Mm-hmm.
it was a fun ride. I had a big budget, $13 million to.
Oh, wow. You can play around with that.
You'd be surprised how much of that back then went to newspaper, right? Because
Yeah.
back in that day, the internet really still hadn't.
What year are we talking here?
So 2002 to 2004.
It was early.
I mean, I built my first website in '92,
Oh, wow.
right? So 10 years prior to that, I did design the website. That website did win some awards. I'm talking about YHD. I had a lot of fun there. And the budget.
Mm.
The budget went primarily to the newspaper ads,
Mm-hmm.
because we were in anywhere between 7 and 13 newspapers a week. That was about 70% of my budget, but that still left a good $5 million to do
So
other
that was
things with.
so that was 1992, right?
19 no 2002.
Oh, that was when you made the okay.
Yeah, 2002 is
2002,
when we
man.
started. Yeah.
Like I feel like commerce online was still in its infancy then.
Yeah, we
right?
were the
Like,
first company to really do and take home tours online.
interesting.
In fact, the marketing manager at Weichert actually called and interviewed me after I'd left Foxtons. Because YHD turned into Foxtons, so
Oh, okay.
that's a
Why
whole
did
other story.
Foxtons? I know. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that sounds familiar.
So YHD eventually went away, and I was looking for a job. They interviewed me at Weichert and said, "Why did you show people the insides of the house?" And I was like, because that's what people want to see, right? It was just like like the old school model is we show you the front of the house, so you'll call us.
Exactly, yeah.
So we'll show you the inside of the house,
Yeah.
right? That's the way the business model worked.
Yeah.
But we were the first company really out there that really showed everybody what they wanted to see.
Yeah.
And really changed the industry. It was pretty wild. There was
That's
a lot of things that happened at YHD that were groundbreaking for the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, there's still a level of that business model today, even because now that online marketing is so pervasive, that business model is sort of morphed into something like with the price, for example. So you see an ad on Facebook with a beautiful house, and you will see the inside pictures, but there's no price, there's no town, right? So they're leaving out other stuff. So they want you to still call or still fill out the form.
Right.
It's all about capturing the information.
That's
at the end of the day. You know what I mean? But that's really interesting that you guys were one of the first ones to actually start giving people what they want too. And I feel like nowadays that's what actually works, right? You give people what they want.
Sure.
Builds trust in the market, and
Exactly.
you know what I mean. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's a big budget to play with. Cool. So you're still doing all this now, right? You're doing the internet marketing, you're doing graphic design.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And I do it for companies all over the world. So
Yeah.
I just finished a website for a company that rents boats in Florida. I have a client in California that does college recruiting. I was even hired by a Chinese company to design some business cards. How does that happen? I don't know.
I was actually going to ask you. So how are you getting these clients from all over the world? Let's say there's someone out there who has a similar business. I mean, you're very mobile because you can kind of do what you do from anywhere. So how are you getting these international clients or clients on the other side of the country or something like that?
I started doing some work in Florida when I connected with a girl I went to high school with. Her and her husband started a business in Naples, and I did some work for them. They didn't do boat rentals, but they did eco tours. They drove people around the Everglades and showcased the off there.
Interesting.
Right?
It's an interesting business.
And they needed a website, so I built a website for her, and then I started getting phone calls from Florida, because she would spread the word, and other people would spread the word, and that's how it would get around. The way I got the guy in California, I know, is all because of some goofball thing I did a couple of years ago. I'm a big Giants fan, New York Giants fan. And I was watching the Giants play the Cowboys, who I despise. And the Cowboys beat the Giants. And Chris Christie was sitting in the booth with Jerry Johnson. And at the end of the game, he got up and hugged Jerry Johnson. And I was just like, son of a bitch. I was so mad. I was so furious. My governor, and I could use some other words, is hugging...
Ex-governor.
Yes, is hugging the owner of the Cowboys, my despise. So what I did is I went out and I had seen this picture of a guy, really big guy, goofball guy, dressed as a cheerleader. And it's just a really funny picture on its own. And I took a picture of Chris Christie. It was a really funny looking picture of Chris Christie, like he's making this goofball face. And I put it on there. And then, I superimposed it in Photoshop.
Yeah.
There's Chris Christie as the cheerleader.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. That's a good one. You're a very talented man.
Which I've been doing that for years too. Been getting myself in a lot of hot
Are you responsible
water.
for all the memes I'm seeing on the internet?
I'm in trouble for a lot of those things. But I did that. I posted that, and somebody shared it to 101.5.
Okay.
And maybe a day later, the Trentonian called me and said, "Hey, can we use that photo on the cover of the publication?" And I said, "Absolutely not." I was already panicking that it was getting spread everywhere.
Yeah.
Because the cheerleader picture of the fat guy was NFL Films property, and I'm like, I don't have the rights to use that. You can't use that.
True.
And plus, I don't want the governor on my ass. He's going to close my street down. It's like I need to get to work and meet clients and things like that. And so they said, we'll cover you. It's a parody, no problem. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, you have to put that in writing for me.
Yeah.
I want to see your lawyers write that down because I don't want any heat off of this at all. And they did. They sent me that, and they posted. They put it on the cover, and then the next day, the Washington Post and Chicago Sun and the Dallas Times, and
Wow.
it went all across the country. It's still on, like, just Google it. Go Chris Christie cheerleader, and you'll see it.
Yeah.
It's still on thousands of sites. It ended up on Sports Center on the following Sunday morning. Within a week, it was on
probably
Sports
seen
Center.
this.
You probably have, and it was retweeted by some guy on the NFL Network too.
Oh, wow.
One of the announcers. So my website traffic spiked in that week. It would, like, and I'll never, in the entire lifetime, I'll never get that much traffic to my
Yeah.
website again if you add everything else up except for that one weekend.
Yeah.
But it was fun. But that's how that guy found me in California.
Wow.
And yeah, it was.
Jeez. That's a story like that is so crazy. I mean, I always think it's fascinating, like in life, just what you do and what can happen to you. And it seems so innocuous and unimportant. And then years later, I mean, it just can matter, like a
Right.
connection you'll make, and then it comes back around and you get business out of it, and like change the whole course of your life. Like that one thing, that doesn't happen to you, your whole life looks different the rest of your life, right? I mean,
Well, I wouldn't say it was a defining moment, but it certainly was fun.
yeah, not necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean like that, like not a
Yeah.
defining moment, but like, I don't know, man. It's just any path you take, you meet new people, and if you didn't do that, there's some people that exist in your life now that you may never have met, right?
Yeah,
and then who
absolutely.
knows what comes out of that.
Yeah,
I always find that
yeah.
stuff fascinating.
Yeah. I did get a lot of phone calls after that. A lot of people.
Yeah.
Out of the blue. Other publications, newspapers saying, "Hey, could you do Humpty Dumpty with Chris Christie?" I was like, "Okay, sure. I don't know if it'll be as funny, but I'll try."
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Nice.
yeah. It
That's
was good.
cool.
Good stuff.
What other can you talk about any like big clients that you have right now that you're doing work for, or?
So I've done a lot of work because I used to work for traditional ad agencies. And So in the past, I got my start working for AT&T. I worked for a small design studio in Red Bank, and they really gave me a foundation of graphic standards to follow. A lot of companies these days, especially small companies, don't understand how important that is.
Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean by graphic standards?
So a company like AT&T or Philips Lighting is another one that has very rigorous standards. They will actually give you a guidebook and say, you have to follow these standards whenever you design anything for us. So usually a creative agency will put something like that together, a graphic standard. And then when you're working on whatever it happens to be, whether it's a brochure or what have you, you have to make sure that the logo's in the right position, the fonts are the right size, you're only using the colors that they want, as well as the type of photography. Some people will go, even some companies will even go into, it's like it has to be like this.
Gets super specific, huh?
They do. And a lot of that has to do with, just being recognized for who you are. Anytime you step out of that realm, people don't always recognize you right away. It's like, I tell some clients that come to me and say, "Hey, I want to change my logo." And I'm like, "You have a lot of equity in that logo. You might not want to make that change that you're thinking about." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Well, you've got 10, 15 years of equity built in that logo. People recognize you from that logo. If you just change it to change it, people won't recognize you. They'll have to learn you again. They might think that you're owned by a different company now, or maybe that somebody's ripping you off, and now that you're lying to them, they don't trust it."
Interesting.
Yeah. So, it's, I try to explain that to companies that, like if you ever walk down the aisle of the grocery store, you're looking for that soup. You bought the soup 100 times, but you can't find the soup. You're looking in the same spot that the soup always is, but you don't see it. Why? Because they changed the label.
Yeah.
Right? It's that same sort of thing. You really need consistency when you're building your brand. It's really super important.
That's pretty interesting. But then where do you cross the line between, say, like rebranding, right? Because I'm in real estate. So, for example, I know Century 21 was a company that just went through a huge rebranding recently. They changed their logo. I mean, their colors are still the same. They're still black and gold, but they changed their logo. And I wonder, it's interesting what you're saying. I never thought of that perspective before. Kind of like you want to hold on to the brand equity you have.
Right.
And so I wonder what makes a decision in a big company like that to throw all that out the window. 100. I don't know how long Century 21 around. It's called 100 years or something. They throw that out the window and say we're new now. Like, so where do you cross that line? You know?
So usually it's a company that's in trouble or hot water and they want to change their image, right? Like AIG used to be different name, right? They got in a lot of hot water. They changed their name. They changed the logo a little bit. They kept the font and the color, right? So And if you look at whenever somebody goes through a branding change, they usually stay to color. And color is usually the most important thing. Font, not as much, but I would say that's secondary. And then they usually change the shape or the positioning of the logo when they do a rebranding. Sometimes people will do that to correct slumping sales, or they don't feel like they're fresh. You really need to do a market study before you do something like that. And especially if you're a big company, you're going to have the money to do that, because it does cost money, but you're going to want to investigate and see exactly, what's
it instinctively,
if it's necessary.
Yeah, I was going to say it instinctively feels to me then like it's when a company does that, you almost assume they're in trouble, right? I mean, there's a higher probability they're doing it to right the ship, so to speak, versus if it was working, why fix what's not broke, I guess, right?
And Coke did it when they started seeing slumping sales to Pepsi.
Yeah?
Right? Yeah.
When did they rebrand?
New Coke. New Coke. Remember New Coke? That was
kind of, yeah.
And then they went right back to the old Coke because it didn't work so well.
Really? Interesting.
That was in the 90s. Yeah. So
that's one of the world's most iconic brands, right? Coke.
It is. It's the oldest brand too. It's from the mid 1800s. So.
Wow. Would have been nice to get in on that stock early on, right? Warren Buffett's a smart man.
So, as far as big clients though, right now I do work for an international organization that's located in, or they operate out of Columbia Law School. They have offices in Frankfurt and Canada. I manage their e-commerce, so they host classes at Fordham and Columbia and a couple other places. So everything I do has Columbia Law School or Fordham University on it. I have to adhere to their graphic standards, as well as the school's graphic standards, as well as sometimes third parties. They're actually in conjunction with another company. So they're the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators is the one group. And there's another company called NIAC, and these are all organizations that operate inside these universities. And when they all come together to put on a show, they just recently started a weekly event that's called the International Arbitrators Week. And they host it in New York City. And there's a lot of big players with a lot of heavy hitters. International law firms from all over the world come to this event. And I have to make sure that everybody's happy, which is pretty hard to do when you're talking about 35 companies, right? And, I put that together. I put together the e-commerce so people can register for the classes. They can download the brochures. They can see what events are going to be happening. So there's a lot of material that go along with that. It's not just, a simple website. It's everything from the banners that are going to be inside the building to the takeaways that they're going to walk away with. So it's a lot.
It is, and it's like people we never think about stuff like that, but when you really boil it down and start to think about all the copy that exists in the world and that you need in an event like that, I mean, it is a lot, right?
It's a ton of stuff.
It's every little thing. I mean, it needs to be there too. It's pretty essential.
Yeah. So it's a fun job. I enjoy it, and I love when it's done. To look at everything that was put together. So like a weekly event like that, you have no idea how much stuff is involved. It's just, and there's always something that's crazy last minute. Like the week that it was happening, I got like 15 phone calls. We need one more thing. I'm like, you're kidding, right? The thing closes in 2 days. Can you get it to us? I'm like, yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I'm gonna try. So
nice.
So
you've been doing this for what, 30 years? You said.
Yeah. I started. I started to tell you the story. I was originally going to school to be an architect. My father, I was just sort of messing around after high school. I was an electrician. I was a baker, and my dad was like, "What the hell are you doing? You don't have any future.
Yeah.
You got to do something. Come work for me."
What does your father do?
He's an architect.
Okay.
And I said, okay. And I started going to Brookdale and was taking some classes. And I said, graphic design sort of seems fun to me. I'll take some of the classes there. And because it wasn't my major, I always followed the rules of the assignment. But I never took the assignment too seriously because it was like, so I always had fun with it.
Yeah.
And I always did something goofy, like, this is pretty funny. and I was making people laugh in the class. And because everybody was laughing, I was like, I really fed off of that, and that really fueled my fire. And it got to the point where it's like, what can I do this week to really crack them up? And that's just how it all came about. I really became passionate about it, and my professor, who and he entered some of my artwork into a contest, and I won the contest. He said, I'm going to put this in because you're really that good. And I was like, okay, cool. And then, that just was like, that's when the light bulb went off, like when I won the awards, then I was like, all right,
I might be pretty good at this.
Maybe I should stick with this. And I transferred to Rutgers, and I was taking art. And then this desktop revolution thing happened. I've always been a geek. I was always interested in computers. And, I just started getting into it. I was very passionate about it. And again, professor said, I know a company that needs your help. I was taking computer programming at the same time I was taking art because that interested me a lot. I wrote a little tiny script that helped me reduce my production time. It just basically formatted the text as it flowed in. And he goes, you got to go see these people. And they got me an interview at Connors Publishing in Manhattan. And the guy sat me down, said, I want you to make this look like this. And I said, okay. And and I said, do you mind if I, use my... He goes, that's why you're here. Go ahead, use your script. I want to see what you can do. And I finished it. And 15 minutes, the layout, and he was just like, you opened up somebody else's test. He didn't believe me, and then I showed him what I did. He walked me down the hallway into his boss's office, and he said, you see this kid here? I said, yeah. He goes, you got to hire him today. And he goes, well, you took away all my leverage. What do I pay him? He goes, anything you want. And I was like, holy crap,
Damn. And you're a college student at this point?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
But I got a job on the spot there that day. I was making 4 times more than what I was making at the bagel store a few years beforehand, and I quit school. And
wow, so you didn't finish school?
No, I was 18 credits shy.
Wow. And to this day?
Yeah.
Wow.
I never went back.
Nice.
But I was working on 17th Street in Manhattan, working for Connors Publishing. At the time, it was the 3rd largest publishing company in the world.
Wow.
And I was just working on all kinds of magazines. And they started me out as a production editor. I was not an artist. I was a production editor. I wasn't, qualified. And in my spare time, I was doing all these medical magazines, just laying them out. And pretty much everybody else in the company was doing 1 a month. And I was doing like 3 a week.
Wow. I
was just, because I streamlined production.
Yeah.
With my spare time, I taught myself HTML. And that's when I built that first website. And then I still had spare time. I went downstairs to the marketing department. I said, can you give me something to work on? Because I'm bored. And I started doing design work for some of the medical trades. And I was doing advertising for Pfizer and Bristol Myers and, all the big sponsors for the medical journals. And all of a sudden, I had a really nice portfolio. And within 3 years, I was art director for the flagship publication at Connors, which eventually got sold to Excerpta Medica and sold again. And that's when I quit.
Wow.
Because I had a portfolio. Now I could go to an ad agency, and I did. And I went to an ad agency and started doing work for Johnson & Johnson and L'Oreal Makeup.
Wow. How old were you when you...
That's a good question. I really don't know. It was probably 27, 28.
It's about what I thought. If I was following your timeline, I was thinking like mid to late 20s.
Yeah. Probably later 20s, but yeah.
Wow.
Because I got a late start out of college,
Yeah.
Getting back into college. Because I sort of goofed off for a few years. But, yeah.
Seems like it worked out for you in the end,
It did, yeah.
So what did your dad think? So your dad wanted you to be something, and you didn't do that. How was it? Did that cause any tension between you guys or anything?
No,
like
my father's a great guy. He's really understanding, and he just wanted me to be happy. Was he disappointed? Yes, and he'll tell you that he always wanted somebody to take over the business, and I sort of feel bad about that, but it really just wasn't me.
You can't feel bad about that.
I did do it for a number of years. I worked for him while I was going to college, and it's just it was design, which I love, but I really liked the design. It was a lot of math that I didn't really care for. Not that I don't do math now. It's just different.
Yeah.
You know.
I imagine what you do now, you must have just like infinite creative, well, not infinite creative freedom because you have the graphic standards and things you gotta adhere to. But I mean, architecture, it's kind of dry, I guess. I mean, it's really just buildings and a lot of building codes and stuff like that. And
Well, you do have that, right? It's it's like I've always designed a lot of things. I designed jewelry, when I was in college too. Like I painted and I've sculpted and I've done a lot of artistic things. So I think it's in my blood because it comes from my father, who's an artist in his own right. He's a great illustrator as well. But it's different, and I can't really explain that. It's 3D spaces, which I enjoy designing 3D spaces. I used to love building models too. Like we would draw the floor plans, and that was like my favorite part of working for my dad was actually building a small scale house from the building plans. But calculating the flitch beam, or it's like because the snow bearing weight, it's like that's where you sort of lose me. I don't want to spend all day trying to figure out how thick that beam's going to be to support all that snow.
Yeah.
It's just not. It wasn't cool.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So.
Well, at least your dad was good with it,
Yeah.
Did his dad do architecture or no?
No. Actually, he was in construction, but not an architect.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, you can't feel bad about that. You're happy, right? I'm sure he's happy that you're happy, and
yeah.
That's at the end of the day what matters. I've always been. You definitely have to do what makes you happy. I mean, doing what I was doing first when I was a teacher, I wasn't happy.
Right.
And I mean, I was doing tutoring on the side, and I was making good money doing tutoring, but I don't know, working too many hours. Like I would teach school, and then after school I would tutor, and a few hours there, and then I was making good money, but I was very unhappy doing it. And now that I'm doing what I love, I mean, my quality of life is so much better. So like I think it's very important to do what you're happy doing,
right.
And it sounds like you've gotten to that point. So
yeah,
that's pretty good. Yeah. Where do you see yourself going from here?
That's a good question, and it's one of those things that I'm always thinking about, right? Back in the day when I was just involved with doing design, I first got into this, everything was by hand. I actually sat on a big table that was lit from underneath. It was called a light table, and we would use boards and wax and in an opaque paper or translucent paper to mock everything up for magazines. And then, the computer desktop revolution happened, and magazines were the rage, and then the internet changed everything, and then social media has made an impact on that. And so I look at things and try to think about, what is going to happen. And I don't know, I've always been one of those people that sort of like blow with the wind, it's like that if I see a trend, I sort of, ease my way into it. If it interests me and if I can make a dent in it, then I sort of pursue that. I do see a trend in video. It's been going on.
Sure.
It's been going on for a long time, but it's really been accessible now that everybody can shoot, Lady Gaga shot her last video on iPhone, right? Right? It's just a matter of time before a feature-length film is shot on an iPhone.
Good point, yeah.
So...
it's very accessible now, yeah.
And with, all the different platforms that showcase video, I know YouTube's always been there. You've got the Snapchat, and I forget what the new one is that my daughter's always doing.
TikTok, probably.
TikTok, yeah. She's always dancing in the living room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't downloaded that one yet. I won't.
Oh, I have it, but I haven't been.
You're not doing any TikTok. You're not dancing and making any videos on there.
Not yet. Yeah, maybe someday.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did a really nice video for a realtor in Spring Lake, Christine Keaton Realty. She wanted to do a video and hired a drone photographer who shot in 4K. This footage is just stunning. And I went out. We talked about it first. I talked about it, developed a storyboard for it, then actually went out and scouted all the sites that we were going to shoot from. Figured out the angle that I wanted everything to come in at, how to shoot, how to pan, where I wanted the camera angles to be directed. He shot it. We shot it in pretty much a day and a half, and then I put it all together in post, added some titles, added some music, and put it up on YouTube. And she hosts it on her website now. So,
Nice.
and it's not the only video I've done, but that's one of the most pretty. It's the prettiest one that I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people would look at and say, "Wow, that's really pretty sexy."
Mm-hmm.
So, but.
Interesting. Have you thought about like niching down at all and focusing on, say, one industry like realtors or loan officers or, you know, something like, because I mean, I being in real estate, I can tell you like the trend we see in video. I mean, all the coaches and the gurus, quote unquote, that I listen to, and like over 70% of content online is consumed in video, and it's just getting more every year. And if you're not doing video, you basically don't exist in the world, hence kind of what we're trying to do here and stuff like that. So, you know, more and more, that's just going to accelerate. I mean, did you ever think about sort of trying to like, you know, dig your way a ditch, you know, dig a ditch into a niche like that?
So, have I thought about it? Yes. But I sort of don't like to pigeonhole myself into any one genre. You know, I mentioned AT&T and L'Oreal Makeup and Johnson & Johnson. I've also did a lot of pharmaceutical work, not just in the medical publications. But with those, you know, what I really like about my job, let me put it that way. What I really like about my job is that I'm not doing the same thing over and over again.
True.
When I worked for that ad agency, I loved what I did, but, you know, I was always working on first aid tapes or first aid kits and first aid kits and first aid. And after 3 years of doing a first aid kit, how do you really make it? How do you hit the ball out of the park this time, Robert? You really got to hit the ball out of the park.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that, you know, I might work for a pet store today. I might work for a financial planner tomorrow.
Yeah.
And, you know, who knows what else?
Yeah.
A boat rental place in Florida. You know, it's like, that's a lot of fun. And I can bring a lot of experience and insight and different creative viewpoints, I guess, because I'm not just doing real estate.
Yeah.
Right? Over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of real estate. I've worked for, I worked for Weichert. I worked for, I mentioned a whole bunch. Commercial real estate. I still do a ton of real estate work. I still do a lot of pharmaceutical work, which is good too. But, I really liked having that breadth of different genres to work in because it keeps my job fresh and it keeps me fresh.
Yeah, I could imagine. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's see how I can get boring doing the same thing over and over again, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, that's the same reason why I didn't become an insurance salesman. Not that there's anything wrong with being an insurance salesman, right? But it's just not very, it's the same thing all the time over and over again. You're filling out the same form, paperwork, and it varies from people to people. And I'm not knocking insurance people.
Yeah.
I'm more like a pinball than a straight line kind of guy.
Yeah.
I'm all over the place.
Whatever works for you, right? I mean, again, as long as you're happy doing what you're doing, like that's the ultimate goal. So.
And that's the other thing that I think that's kept me relevant is because not only that I'm experimenting with or have worked for different types of companies, but the media and I touched on that before. The media has changed so drastically, and I'm always looking for something new to dive into because if I just did the same thing all the time, I'd be bored. You know, so that's why when you guys said, "Hey, do you want to get involved?" I'm like, hell yeah. Let's go do that. Let's try it.
Yeah, I like that attitude. I mean, like, which you're touching on kind of where I was at when I was a teacher. So when I started, I mean, I'm smart in math. I have a math degree. So I like doing like higher level math. I like being challenged. And I found myself teaching, high school geometry. And nothing wrong with that. I like teaching and I liked helping. But I was looking at it from the perspective, like, if I'm teaching the same high school geometry topics for the next 30 years of my life, I'm going to go insane, right? Like I can't do the same math over and over again for the next 30 years. So I needed variety, you know what I mean? And now, I've worked my way over to sales and it can be the same thing over and over again, but like I think the people, I guess, is what makes it interesting for me. I just love meeting people. I mean, you meet someone new every day. Everybody's got a different story. Everybody comes from somewhere different. Everybody goes somewhere different and gets there in a different way. And I don't know, people are just super fascinating to me. So I like that aspect of what I do. You know what I mean? You get to just meet someone new every day, and then, like with this, we're trying here. We're trying something new, and you always have to try something new, otherwise you don't grow.
Right.
So, and I think it's important too to keep in mind, like you don't always know where it's gonna end when you start, right? So like we're starting this, and you just don't know where it's going to go. I mean, similar to you, like when you got into graphic design, I mean, you didn't, like when you got into that, so you didn't know you were going to be doing that your whole life, right?
No.
You're like, sounds like a fun class, let me try it.
Right.
Next thing you know, 30 years later, I mean, you're a professional your whole life. Like that stuff is just always fascinating to me. Small decisions you make that send ripples through your life like that, you know?
Yeah. So back in the day, in the late 1980s, Photoshop was not owned by Adobe. It was owned by a company called Aldus, and I think it was called Super Paint or something along those lines. I actually started using Photoshop, Illustrator, and a handful of other applications. I think PageMaker was the other one that was owned by Aldus. And when I worked for that small design studio in Red Bank, they had that application there. And there was limited time that I would get on the computer because, there was other people there that also had access to it as well. There's Chris Christie as the cheerleader.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's a good one. You're a very talented man.
So back in the day, I started dabbling with that software. It always interested me. And one of the first jobs I got was at a print shop that doesn't even exist anymore. Actually, it was a pre-press shop. This is early 90s. They were one of the first companies in the world to get the very first beta of Photoshop. Back then, Photoshop didn't have undo. It didn't have layers. It was a memory hog to the point where you would do something to your artwork, like you would airbrush something out, and then you'd hit save because you didn't want to lose that change, because back then computers crashed all the time. Mm-hmm. So you'd hit save, you'd go get a cup of coffee, and then you'd come back and you'd see if that save was done yet.
Oh my goodness!
And we're talking about files that were like a meg.
Wow.
Like that was huge, right? We'd scan pictures for in this giant drum scanner that was about as big as a refrigerator. It took hours and hours and hours to scan. But I worked second shift at this pre-press facility that had 3 shifts, and they had a big picture in the foyer of the office of the 3 owners and their prize-winning racehorse. Mm-hmm. And one night when I was goofing around with Photoshop, I went into the foyer and I took down the photo, and I scanned the photo and put the photo back up. The next night, I went in and I took that scan and I started messing with it, and I made the bald guy have hair. The guy who had a beard now was clean shaven. I just switched everybody's faces around with Photoshop, and I was messing around with it. I thought it was hysterical.
Yeah.
And so did a few other people. And, I said, you know what? I printed it out. And then, all in all, this process took about a week because it took that long. And I really had to still do my job at the same time. But at the end of the week, I had the new photo mounted in the foyer. And, oh, my God, was that hell to pay. They wanted to know who was the guy who put this in our foyer. They were furious. They were mad.
Really?
And they did not think it was funny at all, because I was wasting company time too, right? That was a big deal. But nobody ratted me out, and I didn't get fired. But that started me on this path of messing around with Photoshop and messing around with people's faces. And I literally have thousands of those photos, either me on somebody else or, just something like Chris Christie, I've had a lot of fun doing that over the years. Nice. But I've been using Photoshop before Adobe owned it, and I still do it. Somebody asked me today, hey, could you merge Ert and Bernie and call it Bernie? Give him white hair to make him look like, and I was like, I really don't have time for that today. I'm sorry. It's a good idea.
That doesn't rank on your list of priorities.
Yeah, I didn't have time to do it today, so I said maybe we'll see, but I didn't do it. But I do get requests like that from time to time for people, and if it's easy enough and I can do it quickly enough, I would do it. But there's not really much of a difference between Bernie and Nerd. I just couldn't figure out a way to merge it. I took a look at a couple photos and I said, nah, I'm not doing this.
Well, you gave it a look,
I did look into it, but that's something I do have fun with. I even have a Fiverr. It's like,
yeah.
Yeah.
You get business on there or no?
No, I really don't. But at times I've put up a Fiverr and said, hey, just send me 2 photos. Tell me what you want me to do, and I'll merge them for you. And
Yeah.
like I'll get guys for like on their bachelor parties. They'll say, hey, can you make this guy, in bed with this girl? And like we're gonna send it to his wife. I'm like, all right, sure. So I hope I didn't ruin anybody's marriage, but
That's a dangerous skill to have, actually, isn't it? You can really ruin some people's lives with stuff like that.
I suppose I do worry about those deep fakes that they're
I
talking
know,
about.
right? I was actually just about to bring that up. I've seen some videos where, I mean, you can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
It's like really, really scary what they can do like that.
Yeah, it's gonna be a different world in a few years.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
Can't trust anything.
Yeah.
So
Cool. Well, I mean, before you get out, I would definitely want to at least touch on. This is called, the Monmouth Ocean Experience. So I want to touch on a little bit of local stuff. So are you from the area originally, from Monmouth Ocean originally?
yeah, I actually grew up in Ocean Township,
Okay.
and I literally live around the corner from my father still.
Nice.
I can walk to his house in 5 minutes.
Nice.
I actually played in the dirt when they were building my house. When they built the house in the development where I live in currently, they had lots of big piles of dirt, and we were all playing King of the Hill when I was a kid in that area. I love it here. I'm a beach boy.
Me too.
I spend every chance I get at the beach in the summertime. That's like. During the winter, I will work on the weekends. I don't work every single weekend, but I usually pretty much work every day in the winter. But as soon as the sun's out, I like riding my bike up and down the shore, and I usually ride from Long Branch to Spring Lake and back. And
It's a nice ride.
and it is.
You ever work on the beach or no?
I did a long time ago. I worked at actually my very first job was the Deal Casino. I was a locker boy.
Nice.
And I got people towels.
Nice.
That was a very demeaning job.
You got to start
I
somewhere,
ate
right?
a lot of crap and was abused by all the New Yorkers who would come down and berate me because I was just a locker boy.
Yeah, it's a cost of doing business, I guess.
Yeah.
Nice. So you still live in the first house you bought, or you
No,
built your house, or
No, when I moved out of my folks' house, I lived in Wanamassa for a while, and then we bought this house that we're in now. I've been there 20 years.
Nice.
Yeah, 20 years.
I have friends that live in Wanamassa on Doe Street, I think it is, or Dow, right
Dow.
off. Right in that area. It's a nice area over there.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. I don't know how long we'll stay. Stay as long as I can afford it.
Yeah. Where would you go?
I don't know, because I really don't like anywhere else.
Yeah.
It's like if you go too far south, it gets really humid, and I don't really care for that.
Yeah.
I don't like the cold either, so I don't want to go, up in Connecticut. You can get more. You go to Connecticut, it's even more expensive, I guess. I don't know.
You try like North Carolina or South Carolina.
It's,
Split the difference,
It's a little humid down there too for me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'll probably die in Jersey personally.
Yeah. I just don't know if I can afford to stay here when I retire. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I can retire if I guess I can't retire if I stay here.
Well, they got some affordable adult communities down in Berkeley, Toms River area, Holiday Cities.
Yeah, maybe.
If you're into that kind of thing, some people, the taxes are really low in those things.
I would like to stay in this area because, like I said, I like being by the beach.
Yeah.
And I like riding on the beach, walk on the beach with my wife in the evenings.
That's nice. That's honestly, that I think about this sometimes, like, there's people that grow up in, I don't know, the middle of the country, Kansas, whatever, like never see the beach. We have it 5 minutes from us. How lucky we are. That's part of what I love about this area. I was born and raised in Toms River. My parents moved down from Union. My dad was a fisherman, wanted to be by Island Beach State Park. So I grew up going out on the beach every weekend, going fishing, driving up onto the beach. Moved here about 7 years ago with my wife. Now we live in Howell with our son, and I'll never leave this area. Like, I just feel like this area has like a magnetic pull, like it pulls people back when they leave almost, But yeah, I love it. I'll probably never leave. Probably live and die here.
I can't imagine myself anywhere else,
Yeah.
California? No, I don't think so. That's the only other place that would have a similar climate and be by the water.
Yeah, true.
But I'm not moving across the country, not my age.
Yeah.
Maybe back in my 20s I would have, but not now.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your favorite business in Monmouth Ocean County? Or a place you like to go?
Besides mine?
Oh yeah, of course.
I like going to shows at the Camp Basie. That's a great venue.
Mm-hmm.
I usually go to like one or two there.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah.
How about you ever check out Uncle Vinny's Comedy Club in Point Pleasant?
I have not.
That's a good place. If you like comedy, that's a good place to go.
I do like you can tell that I like comedy.
Well, yeah, of course you do. Yeah, no, that's a good place to go. It's a cool, quaint little place. You know, $10 to get a meal or something, and then $10 for the show. Good stuff there if you check that out.
Yeah, that's cool. I haven't been to a comedy club since Rascals in Ocean Township.
That doesn't ring a bell to me.
I saw Sam Kinison there. Saw a bunch of guys there.
Yeah.
It was a great place. You don't even know who Sam Kinison is, do you?
I was thinking about it. You said it. I was like,
you're too young.
Sounds familiar, but I don't know.
He was in Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield.
Rodney Dangerfield, I know. Back to School.
Actually, they traveled in the same circles, so like they were always at the same clubs.
Oh yeah,
Rodney and him. But
that's cool. One of my favorites was George Carlin. You remember George Carlin?
Mm-hmm.
He came to my school at TCNJ to do a show there one time.
Really?
I saw him live. Yeah, that was really cool.
He was a very smart guy.
Yeah, you could tell his comedy was always like intelligent humor, you know,
irreverent, and really questioned our leadership.
Yeah,
and I admire him a lot for that.
Yeah, my dad always liked him a lot too.
Yeah. In 2008, one of my biggest clients, or actually was my biggest client at the time, was Sims Corporation. You guys might not know Cy Sims and the Sims clothing stores, but they were a regional clothing retailer. Okay. Up and down the eastern seaboard. They had stores in Boston, Washington, D.C., Miami, New York City, and Chicago. Handful of stores, probably a couple dozen in each. Well, not a couple dozen in each location. Probably about 35, 36 stores in total. And they also owned, at one point, Filene's Basement, which had about 18 retail locations. Not 18, 80 retail locations. Okay. Sorry, it is late on Saturday.
It is.
I was doing all their billboards. I was doing all their retail, all their ads, their newspaper ads. So I was doing about 7, 8 newspaper ads a week for them. They would tell me what the sales are. I designed the ad. Always had a lot. It was a clothing store, so it was always fashion oriented. And they had come to me at some point and said, we want to do this Facebook thing. We heard about Facebook, and this is like 2006, 2007. I'm like, come on, we tried Friend Finder. That was not a big success.
Oh, man.
And I just wasn't a believer. But I said, do what the client wanted. And I took some of the coupons that we were using in the newspapers, and we put them on Facebook. And then they called the next week, and they said, we're going to do it again. I was like, okay. And then the next week, they said, Robert, we're going to double down on this, and we're going to drop one of the newspapers. I'm like, really? What's going on? And the marketing VP.
I'm not going to cut you off, but so that's big news to you, right?
That's huge. When somebody changes something like that, right? You're doing, those newspaper ads cost a lot.
Yeah.
A full page ad in the Washington Post is not cheap.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're going to say, we're going to move over here.
Yeah. And especially it's a big shift, move from print to media to digital too, right? Like that paradigm shift.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I said, what's going on? And they told me 50% of the coupons from this weekend came in from Facebook. And we could track that because every time I would generate a barcode for, the ads, I would generate a barcode for each location. So we made sure that when it came into the system and it was scanned, we knew exactly where the ad came from. And she said 50% of all the ads, of all the coupons that came in this weekend were from Facebook. And I'm like, okay. I started putting my portfolio up there. All right, I'll try it. I started. This is before they had business pages. This was just a profile.
Yeah.
And I posted a couple of, my favorite portfolio pieces, and I started getting phone calls. Like right away. I need a logo. Could you do a brochure for me? I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. and then I doubled down and tripled down, and I put a logo up, and I get 5 phone calls.
Wow.
And it just kept blooming and blooming and blooming. All of a sudden I had, 5,000 people following me, and I had to change from that personal profile to a business page. and then it just kept going. And it was, I'm not exaggerating at all. Driving down Highway 35, sitting at the traffic light in front of Monmouth Mall, and some guy rolls down his window. So I roll down my window, like trying to see and he goes, "You're the graphics guy." And I'm like, holy shit. Like, did that really just happen?
That's crazy.
And, it's like I was, at the time, I probably had like 10,000 followers. This is like maybe 2011. I don't know.
Wow.
And I had more followers than like all the other ad agencies in Monmouth County or New Jersey combined. Because like I was looking around, and there was like none of the agencies had really jumped on. There were a couple of digital media companies that were just doing just Facebook.
Yeah.
But I still had more than they did.
Wow.
Like twice as much as they did. So, yeah. And people started asking me, like, how are you successful at this? How are you doing it? Because you used to be able to see exactly how many numbers of people follow your page.
Yeah.
They hide that now. I don't.
Yeah.
And it was just because I was putting stuff out there, and in between every one of those real things that I was doing, like an actual logo for a client, I would, throw up a picture of, Chris Christie or something else, because those got tons of traction. I would put that out there, somebody would share it, then somebody would follow me, and 5 people would follow me, and then it just kept growing and growing.
Wow.
And yeah, it was just it was great. I was teaching Facebook. I actually went to a class on Facebook because they had something at Brookdale, and I heard that this woman really knows her stuff. And I walked in the door, and she goes, "Why are you here?" Like, I'd never met the woman before, and I never met the woman before. And she's teaching this class, and she knows who I am, and she's like, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Because I want to learn." It's like, I heard you're really good, and I want to see what you have to offer. And she did. I did learn from her.
Uh-huh.
But she was just, like, it was just crazy that she was like, like, okay, give me a break. It's like, I don't know everything, but I had a lot of fun doing that. And, as we started to get into this, is Instagram was right behind Facebook. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that far off.
Yeah. And
I had, at the same time I was doing Facebook, I was trying to do the same thing in Instagram. The problem was nobody was on Instagram yet. Mm-hmm. There was just nobody there at all. And it wasn't until later on where people were saying, you should go on Instagram. And I was just like, they're really not interested in it. And, like, I've tried. I do a lot more goofball stuff on Instagram than I do on Facebook.
Yeah.
I really keep things separated. So, like, my personal profile is completely outrageous. All I do is try to make people laugh. That's all I do there.
Yeah.
My business profile now is really focused on business, and I try to keep it, up and up. Mm-hmm. Every now and then I'll throw something stupid up there. Mm-hmm. But I really try to keep those two things separate, because I want people to know that, even though I'm out there having fun and I'm doing silly things like that, I do take my work extremely seriously. Mm-hmm. And I really have a passion for it. I love what I do. And it's really important for people to know that the professional side of me really is extremely professional.
Yeah.
Because it's important. In order for me to succeed, my clients have to succeed. So I really have to do my best for them. Mm-hmm. And I do what's in their best interest. Mm-hmm. I had a conversation with a gentleman earlier today who I was explaining to him how this one client is asking me to build more pages on her website. And yes, I could charge her more for those pages. But I explained to her, it's like, look, the purpose of this page is to showcase how much property you've sold and how much money you've earned for your clients. Mm-hmm. If I build individual pages for all those different properties, people are going to click on those, and then they're going to be focusing on the product. They're going to be focusing on that property. What I want to focus on is the $125 million that you've made for other people in the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to take them away from that page. The focus of the page is the total of the 8 properties, not the individual properties.
Yeah.
So Could I make more money for that client from that client if I build those 8 pages? Sure, I could, but that's not in her best interest.
Right.
What's in her best interest is to showcase that money that she's made for those people.
Yeah.
So, my buddy's like, but you can make more money. It's like, it's
It's not about that though.
see, if I do that, then I'll take the profit. If I do it the way it's supposed to be done and it showcases her work, she's going to make more profit. She's going to tell more people about me.
Exactly.
And then I'm going to make more business in the long run.
Yeah.
And that's how I build my business.
Yeah. That's super important to keep in mind. I mean, it's like any business nowadays, word of mouth, referrals. I mean, it's so powerful, and that's social proof, they call it, right? If you have someone else that's saying you're good, it's more powerful than you saying you're good.
Yeah.
Right. And if you operate in the client's best interest, it's always going to come back to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's all about what I do. Everything I do.
It's really interesting what you were saying about the Facebook thing, because I feel like as you were saying that, I was thinking like you really honed in on like what's still relevant today from growing on social media is just like putting it out there. Like you said something before, you're like, I just was putting it out there. And I mean, look, to some extent, I'm not that big on social media, and it's because I've been afraid to put shit out there. At the end of the day, this is the first step in a huge direction of putting stuff out there. But like that's 90% of the battle is just putting stuff out there, right? It doesn't even matter what it is. You just got to get it out there and do it, and then let people see it, and like surrender the result. You just got to put the action in up front, and then whatever happens.
So I can expand on that in two different ways. And one is, not only do I use it, it's a communication tool. So I use it to get feedback during the day. I'm a one-man show. I work in my office. So, sometimes I need like a break. So I do something silly to get a reaction so I can banter with some people for a while.
Yeah.
Right. And, when I put myself out there, sometimes I say some things that aren't always well received by everyone. Right. And I look at that as, well, maybe that's not my ideal client then. I'm like, there's enough work out there that, if I offend a few people, it's okay. I don't want to offend anyone, actually. I do voice opinions from time to time that do upset people. I used to be more outrageous than I am now. I've settled down a lot. But I do, I work for everybody. I work for Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
And I have tried to tone that down because I don't want to upset either side. I have issues with both of them.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's reasonable. We were just talking about this before you came in. You try to please everyone, you please no one.
You don't please anyone.
You don't please anyone, right? So you just put yourself out there, you be authentic and genuine, and then some people are going to like you, some people are not going to like you. And I've come to realize the people that are not going to like you, they're never going to like you anyway, right? You're just finding that out up front and then push them away. Like, okay, I'm never going to do business with you. Now I know that. Now I can focus on the people I'm going to do business with and not worry about you. And now I know that instead of trying to pander to you and earn that business anyway, and I'm never going to earn it. And I'm just being disingenuine.
There's enough work out there.
There really is. I've come to believe that. There's this abundance. You know what I mean?
And like I said, I don't try to upset people.
Right. Yeah. No one does. Yeah.
And I want as many clients as I can possibly get. So, so sometimes when I do things, I have to scale myself back a little bit.
Yeah.
But I do use it as a tool, as a communications device also. So like, as I said, sometimes I'm there by myself and I want to put things out there. One of the ways, especially in the early days, I would design like 4 logos for one company, before the company's even seen them. I'd put them out there just to get some feedback. Hey, which one do you guys like? Should I present all 4 of them, or do you like 2, or do you like 3, or should I start over?
Yeah.
And that was a good way to get business too, and also to, sort of break my day up a little bit, because I was there all by myself, and
gets a little lonely.
It does. So, but it's a handy tool because I could instantly get feedback too.
True. Yeah. It's a business tool too. I mean, right? At the end of the day, it's a business tool. I've connected with people through social media, and then they were my client in real estate, and I never would have connected with them unless it was for social media. So it's a huge business tool. The other thing you were saying was interesting too, like the way you use the platforms differently. So there's one thing I've kind of noticed, and how I use them and how I consume the content. Like they are different platforms, and you need to tailor your message differently. So it seems like have you seen that meme going around where people are taking a different photo? It's like the 4 photo collage, and it's like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Tinder,
Right.
And it's like true to some extent, because I feel like on Facebook you do have to be a little more, I don't know, professional or like family oriented. People expect a little more wholesome maybe, but like on Instagram, it seems like one of those platforms you sort of peel back the curtains. You know, like Instagram stories, you can show people behind the scenes and stuff like that.
Right.
So I don't know if you're doing too much of that on Instagram, but if you wanted to go back to your outrageous ways, that might be the platform where you could have the outlet for that. You know what I mean? And
So I do post a lot of outrageous stuff on Instagram.
okay, I'll have to start following you then.
That's the place where
What's your handle?
Hazelrigg, it's
Hazelrigg.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I put a lot of my photo collages up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I find anything else that other people do are funny, I share that there too.
Okay.
So, yeah, some of it's a little off color.
Not
Not
funny.
Yeah. Not in any, like usually it's sexually in nature.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, every now and then I'll put something like that up there.
Nice.
It's not, it doesn't cross the boundary, but it definitely is suggestive.
It's kind of cool that you have like an outlet for that side of you. You know what I mean? Because I mean, we're all human beings. We're all people. We all, I don't get very political at all, and I don't want to in here whatsoever. But I will say that one thing my father always used to say growing up. I mean, look at, for example, the election of Donald Trump. I'm not saying anything about it at all, but all I'll say is that my dad would say things like, people talk one way in their living room and another way out in the world. And like part of why Trump got elected is because he's talking the way people talk in their living room on national television.
Right.
And the people that talk that way in their living room but not out in the world are like, whoa, this is my guy. Right. And so it I don't know, I just feel like the average person, they don't have an outlet to be genuine and authentic always in the world, but you have this way of being able to, like, you almost need to, because it's your livelihood. This is how you make your money. So you have this way to be goofy and silly and put out these offensive, funny things and still be a professional and work with these, Fortune 500 companies. And it's like, it's crazy. It's just pretty cool that you can do that.
I've scaled back on my political comments, but I have been very political in the past. And as I said, I have issues with both sides, but I also admire, there's good things on both sides too.
Sure, yeah.
Like you can't completely forget about either faction.
Yeah.
Because hey, we need business and we need to take care of people too.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like you can, but like.
Yeah, you can't do one and not the other at the end of the day.
But the extreme that we've gotten to is really upsetting to me. Because I think that the divide has just gotten and really hurt, friendships, the country, relationships. It's gotten ugly, and it shouldn't be that way because we're all fighting for a common goal.
True. Yeah.
So, and I'm doing my best for everybody that comes to me. So. That's why I've scaled back on some of those political comments. Some people think I'm left. Some people think I'm right. Like the people on the left think I'm right, and the people on the right think I'm left. Because I bash both sides.